Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Commentary is Magic's Tactics Talks stream for today, October 1st, 2017, featuring Banking AT as our topic. I am, as always, Grandpaws.
I am Emperor Bugle.
Big Cheese.
And Arcat.
And we're going to be talking about the most requested topic, or tactic, rather, from our patrons who voted for it over the last week and a half or so, and that is when or when not you should be saving AT for a future turn. This is a common situation that comes up in a lot of different games, and many times there is an objectively right decision, and other times it's not. Other times you might have to just kind of read things as best you can.
And it's tricky to come to a decision. There's a lot of things that can affect that decision. What's in play, what's in your hand, what you think is in the opponent's hand, etc., etc. It's tricky, hence the tactics talk.
That's right. There are certainly times when banking is correct, but it's those times when you have choices, especially when you have choices, that it becomes very difficult to know what the right decision is. Before we get into that, though, let's pass things off to Ara, who will lead us into this topic a little better. Ara?
All right. So before we get into that, let's cover a couple of the obvious places where you shouldn't bank and what you should do instead. There are a handful of cards, and most of you probably know what these two are. The first of which is your opponent has Philomena up in smoke. You're obviously going to lose any AT beyond 2 if you pass the turn. However, that only applies to you. The other one is a card that so many people love, Rainbow Dash on even ground, and it doesn't matter who has her. She's often known by Jerkface and, of course, worse names. If you don't have anything to do with your AT on your opponent's turn or during your start of turn triggers at the start of your next turn, you're going to lose your tokens. We'll talk a little bit about her more later, though. Instead of losing the AT, you can draw some cards. Now, when you should pay to draw when you don't have these two cards on the field is a different tactics clock for a different time, but cards in hand are a resource too. And if you're just going to lose the AT, this at least does let you get some value out of them instead of just being like, well, I guess I don't get to do anything with those tokens. It's obviously not a great idea to be drawing cards if your opponent has a pile of presents. You fear a Nightmare Moon getting uncovered, which just wastes all that hard work, or discarding the cards would be worse than losing the tokens. And for some combo decks, this will be the case. One other thing that you can do sometimes is deliberately eat the AT loss for psychological warfare purposes. Occasionally, you may be able to play mind games with your opponent by banking an action token when Rainbow Dash Jerkface is out. Sitting on the token might make your opponent think you've got a trick up your sleeve, and it might make them try to play around it and waste some tokens of their own.
We don't have as many opportunities to bluff in this game as some other CCGs that have immediate stack style responses, but that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities to do so. And especially with cards like Belly Flop and Napcakes and more immediate tools becoming widely available, it can be a valid tactic.
So, as promised, let's talk a little bit more about Rainbow Dash on even ground. While she isn't prevalent in the meta right now, this makes her all the more dangerous when she does show up because then nobody's expecting her. Any blue deck, or really any deck that's running Fixing, which is most control decks nowadays, that thinks that it can survive spending every last action token better than the opponent might be packing one of these. Due to her timing, you might feel safe banking a few AT against an opponent, but surprise, they fixed into blue and played rainbow, and now those tokens you thought you'd keep are going away unless you've got a trick in your hand. So you need to be careful about this one. Sometimes, even though you think you're safe, you're actually not. With that, let's go over to the reasons that you would bank AT. I believe Bugle has some things to say here.
Well, the most obvious reason to bank AT is if your turn wouldn't be doing too much if you did spend AT. There is an old saying in Dominion that one good turn is better than 2 mediocre turns, and that's true in ponies as well. Your blowout turns are far more impactful to a game than your turns where you don't really do much. So if you could pay 2 to play a friend and then nothing happens, maybe it's better to just hold on to your AT. Another reason you might want to hold on to your AT is because you might have something with this turn and next turn. You might have a better play than if you had just done something this turn. Like maybe you can confront this turn, but maybe you could play something huge and impactful the next turn if you save your AT. For example, Katajack, or she's her actual name, Applejack, Captain of the Seven Seas, costs 5, and you wouldn't be able to play her during your 3 or 4 action tokens turns, but if you wait a turn, then you can. And the other reason you might want to bank AT is to disrupt the opponent, or bluff disruption, as Arakat mentioned before. You can play, for example, we have a lot of immediates and some hasty friends, specifically Rutherford, that it might be better to be able to play those cards than to advance your own board state that turn. So you want to bank the AT for their turn, if not necessarily your next turn.
Okay, so now we've got some general ideas about things we might want to look for in certain situations. As we talked about last time on Tactics Talk, there's a difference between tactics and strategy, with strategy being kind of the big picture goal and tactics being focused on individual snapshots or individual moments in game where you must make a decision based on information you have right then. And the best way to talk about tactics like these is to actually have examples. And guess what we have?
Examples.
0 examples?
It's
So
examples.
So many
Hypothetical-
examples.
Hypothetical situations
Rocks?
without
Teacup.
so teacup.
Teacup.
Changelings disguised as examples?
Maybe.
Oh wait, hold on.
So
That's
do we want to step into our first example here?
Sure, let's do it. We can step into the first example, and chat, this is a great opportunity for you to chime in as well and share what you think the right decision to make in these situations would be.
Right,
So,
and basically we're looking for bank or don't bank. Obviously there will be rationale behind that, but do feel free to share your rationale. But, well,
or things you'll be doing.
yes, there will be a reason that you are spending your action tokens, yes.
Now, for reference of how this is laid out, the cards closest to each edge are the cards in those players' hands. And the cards just in front of that will be the cards in play at people's homes. So in this first situation, we have 3 AT and no points. And our opponent has no AT and 3 points. They've got some friends in play, we've got a Maud and a Madame Lafleur in play, and we've got a lot of cards in hand. So what would you do in this situation? Would you bank your AT this turn? Or would you do something with it? And if so, why? Geez, I know this is a very difficult decision. Do you know what you would do?
Maybe. I don't know. Opponent has some scary cards on their side.
Ara?
They have one scary card on their side. It's right there. Look at her. Look at her with that smug smile on her face.
What, Angel Wings?
Your and my definition of smug is very different.
Yeah. Is
I
RD
like-
actually smiling? It's kind of hard to tell.
I
Yeah.
didn't know balloons could smile, Arakat.
So
What?
this case is a little more obvious, just because our opponent does have a Rainbow Dash on even ground in play. So, Ara, what should we not do?
You should totally bank. This is a great situation. You should definitely bank right now.
Cursed, if there are cards that will be relevant in discard piles, then we will have those listed on the examples.
In this example, there is no, so there's no cards in the discard pile.
Yeah, this is because your opponent has a jerk face out. You obviously don't bank here. You need to be doing something. And there's nothing in the. Or
Well,
nothing
there's
in,
one card you can play. Well, there's
Yeah,
two
you-
cards you can play.
You can play things, but you don't have anything in your hand that says immediate.
No.
So definitely no reason to be saving a large amount of AT here. We don't really gain anything from bluffing the opponent in this situation. And really the best thing we can try to do is advance our board state and not lose those AT that we have saved up.
Yeah, 7 cards in hand, so probably play the cart one. Can't actually read the
Sweetie
cards.
Belle?
Yeah, Sweetie Belle something. Oh, most traditional. And draw a card or something with that other AT.
Yeah, you could play the flower, but there's not enough reason to play the flower right now. And,
Yeah,
and you
especially-
can't play gyro.
Right. The alternative to playing Sweetie Belle would be playing Throne, but
You
honestly-
can't play Throne.
oh, you're right. No, I'm sorry. You can't play Throne. You don't have the white rec for that. So yeah, I'd probably do exactly what she said. I'd drop a Sweetie Belle and draw a card.
I would draw a card and then play Sweetie Belle.
Would you?
Yeah, sequencing.
Yeah.
Well, you might
Because
do
you
that.
might draw something more relevant than Sweetie Belle.
That's true, but we are playing mod. Getting things in our discard pile isn't necessarily the worst decision. You could Sweetie Belle yourself,
You could.
and this would be a reason not to draw first. Rayler, mod is not white. Madame Lafleur turns into a white friend when you exhaust her.
Yes, Madame Lafleur is how you flip the mod the previous turn.
Both a friend and a resource.
Yes. Here you thought you were being cute, you were saving an AT, and then whoops.
Yep.
Suddenly, Rainbow Dash.
Next example.
Yeah, so
Okay.
this one was
Pretty simple.
pretty simple, but we got to start somewhere, right?
So,
Reinforce that jerk face strategy.
so this next one, we're a bit low on cards. Blue pink versus blue white. And towards the end of the game,
Yeah, it looks like your opponent just had a huge scoring turn. That is an impressive board state. I'm
Yeah.
sure they must have a not fancy pants, Dance Fever or something in play as well. But whatever.
they've got some white somewhere.
Our RTO happened somehow.
We also have a couple cards in hand, and a pair of them are hasty, and that's pretty good with Luna.
So, now you could double confront here pretty easily, but you'd only get
Well,
to.
let's have them look at it first.
Well, yeah.
Chad,
Yeah,
what do you think you'd do in this situation? Would you bank? Or would you try to do something with your AT this turn? And I think we'll have slightly different opinions on our side about this.
Yeah, so on board,
So-
opponent could trivially, well, on their next turn, they're going to gain 5, go up to 6, and that's pretty easy.
Okay.
You win.
So Rayler says, play Tyrix Reign of Terror and use Hasty Cadence to put Luna up to it and frighten an Arzia. And this is an option that I was pretty on board with at the beginning too, until I thought about it just a little bit more. Yes, that does leave a Hasty Rutherford in hand. And this is an example Oh, and so you're saying Hasty Rutherford to the opponent's problem. And you're saying go for the DFO?
The DFO will get you 3 points. Or 4
I'll
points,
get you 4
rather.
points, in fact.
That will put you at 14 points.
That's right. But there's a big risk in making the DFO here. Because you cannot close out the game with what you have right now in hand, and you'd be spending all of your AT and your T-Rex Reign of Terror to be able to frighten your opponent. You have no idea what problems are about to flip up. You also don't know what your opponent has in hand, but you know they have a Bluna. And that means that if your opponent has the means of having one Hasty Friend in hand and the Night Glider in play, they could likely cause a DFO on their next turn and shut you out. This is an example where we were saying you may have the ability to make a play in this turn, but it may be more worth it to disrupt the opponent. And I think in this case, that's absolutely true. You can totally frighten your opponent's RTOs, both of them, on this turn. But there's no guarantee that that's actually going to stop them from winning. The better option is, if you do want to frighten RTO, you can play the T-Rex now and play Hasty Cadence up there and save Rutherford for your opponent's turn at their score phase, seeing once they've moved cards. Or even better, just save. Just save the Rutherford and see if they spend all 6 AT to move both RTOs and Bluna up to a problem, and then frighten one of their RTOs then. The reason you might do this is to avoid giving the opponent a problem where they could start a single problem face-off with you having Bluna and Cadence there.
Yeah, I absolutely think that the correct call here is to just not do anything. It's too risky. You could score 1 point. Like, scoring 1 point would put you in range of DFOing next turn, but I think with 10 AT next turn, you just try and triple face-off. Or single face-off if they started a face-off or something.
The one benefit, though, of playing the T-Rex and Cadence is that you'll then draw 3 cards at the end of your turn. Versus right now, if you do nothing, you're going to draw 1 card.
Yeah, it's really, this would be a situation where you might want to look at what cards your opponent has played previously in the game. See if they have things that could make movement more efficient. For example, are they running Call in the Dream Cavalry? Are they running Ever Vigilant? You know, and anything along those lines. Just see what tools they have access to, and that can help you make your decision.
I think I agree with Cheese here. Sit on the Rutherford. Confront your T-Rex. Because the main thing you can do is, if they want to cause a single problem face-off, okay, great. Play Rutherford, scare Cadence, move Luna away. No single face-off for you.
It's definitely a possibility.
Although, to be fair, they're probably playing with RTOs at that point, but that won't get them all the way up there.
Railer, something to keep in mind. We're not actually losing that much if the opponent does play a jerk face. We've got 4 AT worth of hasty cards in our hand. At most, we'd be losing 1 AT. I think regardless of which individual decision we make, we can agree you'd want to save at least 2 AT to play Rutherford on your opponent's turn.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Next example.
Next. So we switched over to running Octavia, and we've got quite a big hand. And our opponent has probably banished a Zecora and played out Paper Twy and tapped her. So pretty early in the game. And they've got 4 cards left in hand.
This is looking like turn 1. They
Yeah.
took their turn 1. Now it's our turn 1. What do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is still very early in the game. Chat, let's hear what you have to say. There's a couple decisions that could be made. Few options for those AT.
You could pay C Reese's Flower and then pay 1 to dismiss no resource.
Yes,
that
you could.
sounds like a good play.
Okay, Cursed says bank. And Cursed, the question I would ask you and others then is, if we want to make flipping Octavia our #1 priority, and she's going to need to confront a problem in order to do so, and we've got 2 AT, why would we not want to move her right now when we have 2 AT? This is a question that you'll think about quite a bit in early aggro matches, specifically on turn 1. And Rayler, I would pose the same question to you. Yes, we absolutely are going to need to get some form of entry out on the field if we're going to confront emergency dress order. And we have the AT to do it. Is there a reason we shouldn't do it right now? Bugle, why don't you share your thoughts on this?
Purple is Trixie. I mean, okay, purple is Twilight right now, but
Trixie
Twilight
is
can
also
be
purple.
Trixie.
And orange.
So the issue here is if you move Octavia, or if you play Rainbow Dash or Tank, you're giving them the opportunity to mess with your plan. And sure, it'll cost, like, they could play TSCV, and sure, that would cost them 3 AT to your 2 AT. They're gaining more AT a turn than you are, especially since Twilight will flip, so she'll start gaining 4 AT to your 2 AT. You probably don't want to waste AT at this point. Now, yes, she might have a Magicite or a Napcakes, but in that case, that happened. There was nothing you could do about it, but you could prepare for the TSUV or the I Just Can't Decide or the Snowfall Frost or whatever. Trixie, even better. I don't know. There are a lot of ways that purple could muck with your plan if you did something now as opposed to waiting until your next turn.
Right. This is a situation that would fall under the first category we were talking about of situations when you should save your AT, which is you're not actually gaining any benefit from it right now. In fact, all you're doing is giving your opponent more information and helping them make their decisions. Moving Octavia up to emergency dress order on this turn is no different than moving Octavia up to emergency dress order on the next turn.
Yeah. Now, if my opponent had a white main, I would probably move Octavia this turn in fear of standstill.
Sure. That's a reasonable decision.
But that's not what we're looking at.
No. Aura, Cheese, your thoughts?
I agree. With all
Your-
of it.
Your opponent doesn't even know what your secondary color is right now. Should absolutely be sitting on your tokens.
There you go.
I do know you have one, though.
Yeah.
Either that or you have a very odd
Or you have a
choice.
colorless.
Octavia colorless, yo.
Oh,
Nothing but
fair
joke
enough.
faces.
Fair enough.
All right. Yeah. Rayler, there are cards that your opponents are going to be running in their decks that you're just not going to have
An answer
options
to,
deal
yeah.
with. Yeah. you can't always have an answer to every single situation your opponent throws at you. What you can do is try to prevent yourself from falling into traps that you could have avoided. You gain nothing by playing anything or moving anything this turn, and it really doesn't make the situation any different than playing or moving next turn. So you might as well not give that opponent the extra information.
But
I-
like I said earlier, 2 mediocre turns are not as good as 1 good turn.
All right, on to the next one.
Cheese, what are we looking at here?
We are looking at a very large Applejack. She has eaten quite a few pies. She's at 9 power right now? Yeah. And your opponent's DJ with some exhausted paper twice. And you've only got 4 cards in hand, no troublemakers. Your discard pile here is obviously containing a bunch of troublemakers. Doesn't really matter what they are, but there's a bunch of them in there.
Probably some other stuff. It's fine. The discard pile doesn't matter here. We're not actually playing mod.
And
we're-
your opponent has like 8 cards in hand, I think. Yeah.
And we're
Yes,
assuming
no-
your trading traditions is purple.
And no troublemakers are on the field right now.
It's a shameful farming deck. What don't have no troublemakers?
Feathers would be displeased.
Feathers
So
would
Curse-
be displeased.
Cursed says draw for TM. Implying that farming decks need troublemakers to farm.
Buy some apples, y'all.
It's not
And-
necessarily VBot.
We saw several vinyl decks that were using Paper Twilight. It's
Yeah.
just vinyl purple control. Well, likely control. Could be combo. Could be pile.
It's never pile.
Yeah,
Could
maybe
be
it's purple pile.
It's never pile.
Could be.
It used to
could be.
always be pile.
Yeah, I would agree with Cursed Chords here. We need some fuel for our fire to keep it rolling.
Yeah, so the answer here is don't bank yet. Pay AT to draw. If you get down to 1 AT and there's still no troublemakers in your hand, then you bank. But as long as there's a chance of playing that troublemaker, you try and play that troublemaker.
I would take a safer route and only draw 2 cards. Because if the second card is a troublemaker, then you can safely play it. But regardless, I want at least 1 action token spare just in case my opponent tries something.
I mean, yeah, if you really want to save in case they play an f-stop. I mean, it does heavily depend on what's in their discard pile. If you care about that or not, but
If we're assuming all they've done has been to keep their hand full and maybe play some other pieces that don't matter anymore.
then yeah. But yeah, you're either drawing 2 or 3 cards here, never 4.
It might only be 1. You might go, oh hey, there's an Aoizodal. Let me play this Aoizodal. I'm done.
For preference, I think I'd like a Nightmare Mode.
All right, next example.
Railer wants to draw Tempest Shadow.
Rayler's going to be hard pressed to do that. I don't believe there are any Tempest Shadows in the game.
I don't even know who Tempest Shadow is.
You'll find out next week.
Oh,
Hopefully
it's a
you're
movie
watching.
character. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully you're watching the movie.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
So up next we've got Dream Guide and Bacon on the field against a Bluna with 7 cards in hand and looks like this is your turn too. You went first.
We are assuming that Bluna has named pink with trading traditions, and that we have named purple, so that we could play bacon and not cheat.
Yeah.
And this is an oldie but a goodie. This is Waking Nightmare. So we've
It's
got
an
kind of
updated Waking Nightmare. I
It's-
see.
you see mimics in there.
I see mimics.
It's slightly updated. Okay, so Cursed says mimics to our problem and save 1 AT to flip Luna.
I disagree.
I would also disagree with this situation.
Do
But
we have
let's-
any other guesses?
Let's hear what else we've got. Railer says drop the Starlight Glimmer, and how are you going to be flipping Luna off of that? You need to discard a card.
We have 7. No, we have 6 cards in hand.
You
Yep.
might want to read the text on Bacon a little more closely here.
Not
Uh,
that you can probably
Bacon-
read it here, but
No, you can't. But Bacon here meaning Sunset Shimmer Clever Girl.
Clever Girl says when your opponent plays a card, you may discard a card of that type to gain 1 AT.
So unless they're only playing resources, you got something to discard here.
Right. And presumably, with Luna naming pink, they're playing some kind of aggro list and likely some Hot Wings variant.
I
Yeah.
bet she's going to play a friend.
so the question you're asking is, can I discard one of my friends? If so, then it doesn't matter how much AT I have.
And if we look in our hands, we've got 2 friends right now, one of which is Doctor Who's Time Loop, who is very important to this kind of deck. And the other is Starlight Glimmer Apprentice Sorcerer, who is less useful in this particular situation.
Yeah, you've already got purple out, and so she's not critical for entry anymore.
So while I agree with Cursed that I would want to play Mimics, I would also drop the Glimmer.
Yep. Well, the Glimmer Troublemaker.
Yes, sorry, the Glimmer Troublemaker.
Yeah, here the
Yep.
correct. I would agree. The correct answer here is to not bank, because you can cheat. You can have AT on their turn when you need it, unless they actually don't play anything. In which case, you're probably okay with that too.
Yeah, then it didn't matter. So
Yeah, Railer, Luna is a trigger when you discard a card. Turns out there are ways you can discard cards outside of your own turn.
You wouldn't happen to know about any of those in Waking Nightmare, would you?
Absolutely not. We certainly did not design this deck to be able to banish half of the opponent's hand on their turn 1.
Well, you better hope that they don't have something to play after they drop the Angel Wings that they've probably got.
Yes, Trailer. If they play anything that's not a resource, you will have a trigger. Which
Well,
would be
You have a trigger regardless.
Well,
you have to
well,
trigger
if you
regardless.
play both your troublemakers and they play a troublemaker,
well, okay, this is true.
Again, we're looking
Bluna-
at primarily an aggro list.
Bluna
or what we
doesn't
can
play
presume to be an aggro list.
troublemakers.
Yeah, so presumably they'll play a friend, and we'll have a trigger. We could discard our Glimmer friend or our Doctor Who's, probably the Glimmer Apprentice Sorcerer, and that will give us 1 AT. And then Luna will say, "Hey, I just discarded a card, and I have an AT. I can do a thing." So the way that the triggers line up works out perfectly for you, and it's very possible this probable Hot Wings player will scowl at you.
Yeah, because if you can hit one of their 2-cost hasty friends after they presumably play an Angel Wings, which would be the dream for them, then you can set them back pretty substantially, especially since you'll have two Troublemakers that'll be flipping face up on your next turn.
Yeah.
So, yep, definitely a situation to look at the different ways that you can gain AT and use AT. Bacon is far from the only card that can help you gain AT outside of your turn. Factory Jack is probably one of the most common. But just something to keep in mind as well. Your AT total at the end of your turn might not necessarily match up with your AT total at the end of your opponent's turn, if you are creative.
Purple's not the only color that's Strixie.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this is purple in addition to orange. But
It's still purple. Next example.
Okay. So here we've got VBot. VBot run. Yeah, VBot runs that. I think this is VBot at least. Anyway, so you've got a vinyl at your problem, an exhausted Paper Twy, and a Changing Throne, and your opponent has got Combo Jack and Kalachura, who has been kitty marked, and some cards in the discard pile.
Yep. They also have a lot of AT.
Yeah.
Like
13.
a lot.
And 8 cards in hand? Yeah. 8 cards in hand.
I'd just like to point out warning signs.
Are there some sirens going off in your head at this point, Ara?
There should be.
What's the first one?
The fact that they're running Apple Vendor.
That's right.
What's the second one? Oh dear, what's that? The setting moon in their discard pile. It's a darn
What-
shame I don't have a gyro.
What's
Because
the
you know what'd
third
be
one?
really funny?
What would be very funny?
Gyroing up a Destiny Drain and going after Luna there.
Yeah,
Well,
it'd be pretty good.
Paying 1 AT for a gyro right now wouldn't be very good when you only have 1 AT.
Yeah, well, that just means that you made a mistake about 3 turns ago.
Pretty much.
Presumably you did other things with your AT this turn.
Okay, so Godo says there's a misfire in hand. Cursed says misfire as well, and isn't sure if he should wait for their turn or not. Do we have any other thoughts from chat? This is kind of a tricky situation, but it's one that you can infer a lot of information from, even if you don't necessarily know exactly how it will play out. Okay, so Cheese, can you walk us through some of the signs that of what we might be facing here? Ara brought up a couple of them as well, but what exactly are we looking at here?
I mean, you're looking at an Apple Vendor combo, and they've already flipped. They only have white and orange on the field right now, still on starting problems, and they're using. We're assuming they're going to use the Party Hard loop to. That's the one where you retire half of them and then draw those cards, but replace those cards with exhausts. And really what you're looking at here is a way to disrupt that combo with only 1 AT. So you've got your two options, Belly Flop or Magical, or Misfire.
Now we've got Berry Punch and Orange Swirl in our hand right now as well. And our opponent has Coloratura. We're at 12 AT and we've got a Throne on the field. So if we were to confront this turn, and then they were to pass their turn, and we were to go again, we could almost certainly win the game if they don't disrupt us. So you might be looking at this as, well, I'll just go to try to close out the game. But there's a few issues with this. The first of which is, if you force your opponent into the corner by saying you have to go off this turn, they're going to try to go off that turn. They'll do the math, they'll see the cards that'll be on the field. And while hitting Coloratura is a possible option, Coloratura is really just providing color entry. And if we're already seeing Princess Luna and Party Hard, then we know they're running some other colors in the deck as well, which means they'll probably have other options for color entry that could include cards like Singing Barrel.
Yeah. So, yeah. You don't know exactly what they're going to do, but you have two one-action token answers to different scenarios. So you wait until the last possible moment and then make one of those two decisions. For
Sure.
example, if the first thing they do is play Singing Barrel into blue, you can probably infer that the next card they're going to play is the Vote, so you should probably play that belly flop now, just to make it harder for them to go off. Otherwise, they are playing Applejack. They're going to probably mill through a lot of their cards, and once you think they've hit critical mass, you can Magical Misfire them, and maybe they won't be able to recover from that.
My step one here, though, would be exhausting Vinyl.
For sure. Yeah, we definitely want to exhaust to see if we have any other options that are here. I don't know what else would be super relevant in this case.
Yeah, this player is strange. They spent AT before exhausting Vinyl.
Yeah.
They spent at least 5 AT.
Who comes up with these scenarios? Jeez.
Yes, none of these scenarios are flawed in any way.
Yeah, Cursed, the key here is you don't necessarily need to know exactly what your opponent is going to be doing, so much as you can have an idea of points where you can disrupt it. Knowing they're using Setting Moon means that, and Breezes means they're probably trying to gain a bunch of AT through retiring those Breezes and then exhaust other friends to draw cards. Whether or not that's using other tools in there as well, like Rising Sun, we don't know.
The important thing to know, though, is that it's the general way to get Rising Moon or to get Luna into Setting Moon to get Luna into play is to recur her from the discard pile because she costs so much, and she has 5 rec, right? Or
yeah, it's 5 purple rec.
Yeah, and so you're basically gonna pay 5 AT to play her, or you could pay 3 to get her into play using the white card.
Redeeming qualities.
Yeah, redeeming qualities. So generally, they're going to go for that strategy.
So just knowing that that is a possible point of disruption is good to keep in mind, and is
Though if the first thing they do is redeeming qualities, then you're already too late.
Yeah.
Well, you're too late in that case. But
I mean, you
then
can
you
still
have to
belly
belly
flop there.
Yeah.
But
right, you've got belly flop as an option. You've also got the ability to let them get all their Breezes out. Have them go through their entire deck. Have them retire their Breezes once in the hopes of replaying it, and then just banish all their Breezes. There are multiple options here, but either one
Well,
of
if
them.
they play the Party Hard, then you discarded your hand. So you don't want to let them get that far.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair.
yeah, I'm still not actually 100% sure if I would be aiming to belly flop the Luna or if I would be aiming to misfire at the right time. The problem is I don't know exactly when the right time would be to misfire.
That's true.
Yeah, you have to wait. You have to see what cards are played.
Yep.
And like I said, if the first thing they do is Singing Barrel into blue, you might as well get rid of their white entry.
I don't know if I do that, because then they're just spending 1 more AT to play the Vote. It's a Singing Barrel. If they make
I
over
mean,
if they
You're
make
still
over
forcing
into
them
blue,
to pay that 1 AT. If they're playing the vote, then you're just letting them
oh, I
combo
mean,
off.
sure,
Yeah,
yeah. At that,
because
if
you can't delay anymore. So
yeah, that's true. If they go to play 1 AT to play the vote, I'll probably just misfire. Or 1 AT to play Singing Barrel for blue, I'd probably just misfire then. I think that'd be more impactful than belly flopping Coloratura.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, should we go to our last example?
sure.
Bugle or Ara, why don't you tell us a bit about what we're looking at here?
Well, and as a note, missing from these images are there's a troublemaker at each problem, a face down troublemaker.
Owned by.
By your opponent. Your opponent has played a face down troublemaker to both problems. Meanwhile, on our side of the field, we have a 5-power Fluttershy, thanks to our 2 double diamonds in the discard. Lots of tanks in play, a Philomena, and 3 True Friends in hand, and an Industrial Revolution. So, not seeing a lot of variety in your cards, but oh well. There
No.
are worse things to draw than lots of True Friends.
What are the options on True Friend again?
That's a good point. Let's go over those. One is move a friend to each problem, or your friends get +1 power until end of turn, or challenge a troublemaker with all of your characters at that troublemaker's problem.
And it is important to know in this case that the modifier from True Friend that gives your friends power until the end of the turn will also affect friends that enter play even after you play that effect.
Because it does say your friends, not
your friends in play.
Yeah. So on the other side, we have a strangely unexhausted Twilight, but oh well. And 2 Applejacks that are unexhausted intentionally, probably, thanks to your Philomena. And a Photo Finish. Also in their discard, we see notably a F-Stop and a Trixie. Meanwhile, you're at 10 points with 4 action tokens. So you've presumably just started your turn. And they only have 5 points, but they do have the maximum action tokens they could have at 2. What do you do? Oh, and our problem is Saving the Day, which scores you an extra point when you confront it. Well, their problem is Seeking the Scepter. Mains cannot contribute power to confronting that problem.
This is a very complicated example. There's a lot to take in.
Yes. Despite the fact that we have a lot of the same cards, there's a few things you could do this turn.
Should we expedite some of this process and say that, well, I'll go ahead and do this without forcing everyone to go through and do all the math. It is possible with these cards in hand to trigger a multi-problem face-off.
This turn?
This turn.
It is possible to score... Yes, it is possible to start a multi-problem face-off this turn.
And I would have to double check this, but I am fairly certain that we would even have the ability to... How's that going to work? 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes,
it is possible to triple face-off here.
Yes, we are able to confront 3 problems if we choose to play Industrial Revolution, which would require playing all the cards in our hand. So knowing that, what do you do?
Also, your opponent has 6 cards in hand. Yeah.
Yeah, they have 6 cards in hand, 2 action tokens, 2 more action tokens they can summon at will, and they say Kesa. Godot says you bank here.
Yeah, the fear of confronting here is the two face down troublemakers, which are probably villains. And them stopping your confront. Because they've clearly got some events.
I don't know. They only have an F-stop in their discard. Why would you have F-stop in your discard if you had events?
Because you have another F-stop in your hand. But you're too lazy to play it or something.
So Cursed thinks that if we have a chance to win with a triple face-off, that we go for it. Any
No,
other takers?
Goto explains a little bit more about his reasoning behind why he would bank.
You don't just have to expend basically all of your resources, Godot. You are expending all of your resources. All 4 action tokens, all 4 cards in hand.
Well, the thing is that if you confront, you... Actually, no, do you... Yes, if you confront, you win. If you triple confront.
If you successfully triple face off, you win the game. Yes, this is true.
True
Yep.
Friend is main phase, but that just means that we have a method of potentially breaking through our opponent's troublemakers.
Yeah, True is also TM Breaker.
Yeah. And Bugle, you felt very strongly along one line here, and what was that?
I think you bank. I think it is very, very likely that the opponent has ways to disrupt you here, and like Godot said, you have the option of being completely blown out. You know your opponent is playing villains, so it's very possible that they have 2 face-down villains. So if you spend all of your resources here to try and win the game, the opponent can just go play a nap cakes or something, or even 2 nap cakes, right? Stop you at both problems, prevent you from scoring anything but Industrial Revolution, and then frighten all of your friends, every single one of them.
Yep, Industrial Revolution.
Well, except for the one at Industrial Revolution.
Sure. Industrial Revolution as a dilemma also serves as a great way of allowing us to potentially get around the opponent playing those troublemakers to continue advancing some points every turn.
Right, yeah.
Popping Corn would also work, as Godot is saying, provided that, yes, we would be playing 1 copy of True Friend for power boosting and the other 2 copies for movement.
Yeah,
so the way you triple confront here is you play out Industrial Revolution.
No, you don't play that first, actually.
Well, it doesn't matter how you sequence that, actually.
Yeah, it actually does mess things up.
Oh, yes, it does. Okay, so you play True twice, moving 2 of your tanks up to Scepter and your other tank and Philomena up to your problem. Then the sequencing doesn't matter after that. You play Industrial Revolution, you play a True Friend, giving +1 power to everything. You exhaust your main, moving 5 power up to Industrial Revolution, and then
that puts a friend into play at every problem.
Which you don't even need, but
no, you do.
Because you need Seeking the Scepter, because you need the other 2 power.
Right. Because
you do need it as you need the critter there. Yeah. Which then has +2 power, and then you triple confront.
Yeah.
Godot does point out that you might want to play the Revolution now and just confront it with Fluttershy, just to score that 1 point.
It's a possibility, but it's also a break point for AT. It's not like your opponent is really for want of AT right now.
Yeah, like
So that's not necessarily as impactful as if you were even on AT. They're obviously gaining a lot more than you. But it is just something to keep in mind as well.
So yeah, I could see why you might want to do that. Getting that 1 extra point now could matter. But yeah, I think you save your most of your AT at least for the next turn to try and beat up those troublemakers. You have 3 TM busters in your hand.
Right. We also know the opponent has villains in their deck. So while getting critter tokens into play at each problem might be nice if the opponent flips cards that aren't villains, we know they have villains, and that just might be opening up the possibility of our opponent to play a troublemaker to our dilemma that much sooner.
Yeah.
Or otherwise disrupt it.
And you're going to be getting your point. Like, you might be able to win off of the troublemakers, depending on what flips up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Your opponent gets a point, but they're only at 5. You're in no rush for this.
Right, yeah. Like, you are giving them a point by doing nothing this turn. Like, giving them a case of point. But again, you're in no rush. You have the lead. Don't be hasty. Don't rush in.
You know what they're going to do,
You're-
though? They're going to play a barrel.
Judge, slow play.
They're going to play a barrel into blue, and then play a jerkface, and then you're going to be sad.
I mean, that is a real risk here, yes.
I
No.
don't know if it's a real risk, but it
is.
is.
They're already in 3 colors, but yes, they might be in a 4th color.
Yes. Yes,
That's combo.
exactly. Seikeza is not guaranteed. Your opponent might forget that. Blackmail is mandatory. Seikeza is not.
It totally should be mandatory.
It totally should be mandatory. Seikeza is the new player's inspired.
Yeah. Triggers that trigger at weird times.
Triggers that you need to write on your wrist with Sharpie to make sure you don't forget them.
And you still do.
And you still do. Can confirm. I will always bear the marker of shame.
Been there, forgotten that.
Yep. But yeah, in this situation, I don't think it's worth spending all of your resources to have a chance at closing out the game immediately, knowing the opponent is playing a control deck, knowing their deck has events that they'd like to recur in it, and knowing they've got AT to play multiple.
Yeah.
I'd be a little afraid of the Nightmare Moon, but
Yeah, I mean, it's possible there's a Nightmare Moon, but we haven't seen a Nightmare Moon yet.
this isn't a great time for them to play it.
Yeah. Like, they would be hurting themselves more than you.
Yeah, you've only got 4 cards in hand.
Granted, they're 4 great cards in this matchup.
Yeah, but they don't know what.
They don't know that.
Yeah, they don't know.
All right. Well, that gives a few examples, at least, to show where banking may be the correct decision and where it may be best to try to get some value out of those AT immediately. Rayler, I would not say that a control deck being down 10-5 against an aggro deck running 2 of the fastest colors is a bad spot for it. I'd say that control deck is actually scoring points faster than I would have expected. Or maybe has managed to put you behind a lock.
Yeah, it scored those points somehow.
Yeah, what has likely happened is that they had a wall and you busted through it somehow, maybe double dilemma or something, and now they're trying to rebuild.
Yep. Anyway, those are just some tips to keep in mind. Look for opportunities where saving your AT for a future turn will net you a much bigger effect. Like Bugle was saying, 1 great turn is better than 2 mediocre turns. Decide whether or not your spending AT is actually going to have an immediate impact on the game. And then decide is it actually worth it for you to try to advance your own board state, or do you really need to save that AT to disrupt your opponent? Are you worried about them potentially closing out the game or swinging the momentum so heavily in their favor that it's better for you to just try to mess up their plans? And Ara, which two cards should we be watching out for?
Berry Dreams and
Orange Sorrel.
Apple Stars.
Fairy Dreams and Apple
What
Stars.
is Apple Stars?
423 Studious.
What set is that from?
Premier.
Premier. Yes.
Oh, and
You
by the
don't-
way, it's a rare.
I don't even remember this card.
Also, you forgot to mention Tantalus. That can totally also drain your AT at the end of turn.
Well, okay, no, see, if you've got that problem, then you've got a different problem, which you resolve by going, Judge!
Or you're playing Nightmare, and why aren't you running combo?
Right, exactly. Cursed asks,
No.
is it a good rule of thumb to first ask yourself, is there a reason to use the AT, and if so, then play it? That is one step. I would definitely ask that question first. Is there a reason to use the AT? If I wouldn't say if so, then pay it. I would say if no, then don't play it. Because there are other questions you might have to ask as well. Could my next turn be better? Could I mess up my opponent? Would they have more to lose than I would have to gain? These would be other questions I would ask before I was sure I was going to spend that AT.
Right, like in that most recent example, there's a reason to spend AT. You know, you could potentially win the game. That's a very good reason to spend AT. But like Grandpa's just said, there are other questions to ask. Can my opponent stop me? And in this case, the answer is probably yes, unless they've been drawing the worst possible draws.
Yeah. So watch out for them Apple Stars. They're dangerous. That
Is Apple Star the long lost cousin of Nightmare Star?
Clearly.
She's actually Yellow Star's long lost cousin. And everyone's, who's Yellow Star? Don't ask.
But we were glad to be able to talk about a topic that was most requested by our patrons, though this will about wrap up our discussion on this topic for today anyway.
What wasn't it unanimous?
It was unanimous, in fact. We'd like to give a big shout out to all our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your regular support. And to our other viewers, if you are not a patron and you enjoy what we do, these streams, live streams of tournaments, other videos as well, please do consider donating. Doing so does get you some awesome rewards, like the ability to vote on polls like the ones we had for this video to determine what future videos we produce. It gives you a chance to share your own deck creations to be reviewed live. And you can even challenge members of Sim or other patrons to feature duels using some wacky rules like Iron Chef or Blitz, or more things that we'll make up.
Those are all totally official formats, by the way.
They are. That's true. If you do have comments or questions that you would like to send our way, or if you're just interested in hearing about what we're working on for the future, there are many ways that you can stay in contact with us. We have our Patreon, as mentioned previously, but we also have a Facebook page at facebook.com/commentaryismagic. We're on Twitter at sim_CCG. That's CIM_CCG. You can always send us an email to commentaryismagicteam@gmail.com. And patrons at the $5 per month level and above get access to our Slack channel, where you can chat live with us any day, anytime. Seriously, our sleep schedules are completely whack.
You have no idea.
And if you're looking to ever watch any of our previous videos, including tournament recordings, you can always find them on our YouTube channel, which will be linked in the sidebar. Please make sure if you do so, and you don't mind subscribing, that'd be great, so we can actually have a channel URL that makes some amount of sense. Because currently it is gobbledygook.
And we're not talking the type that has Pinkie Pie taking trophies away from Big Mac.
Cursed, those challenge rules will be coming to all of our patrons here very soon as we get them written up in a document. We already have them laid out or defined. We just need to get them out. With all that said, though, thank you to each and every one of our viewers, both here now and watching this recording later. I am, as always, Grandpaws.
I am Emperor Bugle.
Big cheese.
And I'm totally Apple Stars.
And we'll see you all here soon with our next stream.
Night.
Seriously, I'm like the best card ever.
Go back to your fanfic.
She's been banned 3 times.
Bye.